of the threats. People come through, you click on the bad link, you open, you forward, you share. Without security awareness training, it doesn't matter how good your systems and tools are. Users are the number one cause
Mm-hmm.
of all risks to security. Security awareness training is so inexpensive. Inbox detection and response, the ability to say, "Man, I don't know if I should open this or not," and having something check it to say, yes, you can click, or no, you shouldn't. Some of the least expensive tools are the ones that are going to protect the SMBs the most.
Welcome to Podcast Wise, Perspectives, Cybersecurity, and AI. Is your small to mid-sized business, SMB, truly protected? In today's episode, host Thin Green sits down with industry expert Stacy Conrad to dive deep into the essential technology and security landscape for modern business. We break down the strategic business advantage of ditching your legacy WAN for modern, scalable architectures like SD-WAN and SASE, Secure Access Service Edge. Learn why network availability is the single most critical attribute for SMB success, and how the rise of remote work forces organizations to rethink the prioritization of critical applications like CRMs. Plus, we uncover the non-negotiable cybersecurity layers every SMB network should implement, from multi-factor authentication, MFA, and managed firewalls, to the importance of employee security awareness training. Finally, discover the biggest operational pain points, like mundane but vital patching and backups, that outsourcing can alleviate to prevent staff burnout. Don't let your business become another ransomware statistic. Tune in for your guide to building a future-proof, secure, and highly efficient network. Let's get started. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Hey, Stacy.
Hi, Finn. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. Thanks for having me on today. I'm excited to get to chit-chat with you and catch up.
Yeah, absolutely. This will be a great conversation. Okay, so let's start with a little icebreaker. Before moving into the cloud and managed service space, your career began with over a decade at a large telecom company. How did that early experience shape your long-term view of enterprise technology and business strategy?
Well, that's such a great question. I joke, a lot of folks know that I had worked on cable and wireless back in the 90s. I was only like 10, I got there out of kindergarten, started in. But back in the day, the large telcos had phenomenal training programs. You came out of college and they taught you about business. They taught you about selling. They taught you business acumen, just a lot of things that I don't think most companies invest in training in the same way. I mean,
Mm,
they locked us in a room for 2 weeks. It was a different time, and so I think it got me very excited about working with businesses, selling to businesses, and then learning the technology. But it's crazy because back then, we were excited to sell long distance,
mhm,
which barely exists today.
Right.
And now we're selling all of these amazing managed service products that are just so different. And it just continues to evolve. And I think it's one of the reasons so many of us have stayed in this industry is it would be like almost impossible to get bored
Mhm.
because there's always something new coming out. I mean, heck, we didn't even have cell phones when we started, which is like, almost, in fact, what's the word I'm looking for? Impossible to imagine right now. And it's just little things that have changed that just keep us always looking to learn and do something more with organizations.
Yeah, keeping you on your toes is basically what you're trying to
Yeah.
say. Technology, right? So a good network today must have uptime, security, high speed, high bandwidth, and high availability. If you had to choose one of those attributes as the most critical for SMB success, which one would it?
You have good questions. I mean, really, today, availability is the most important. I mean, you have to have access to the
Mhm.
internet. I
Yeah.
mean, we really, you can barely unlock your front door, nonetheless, run your organization if people don't have the availability for internet. So I would say availability is probably most important.
Mhm.
Although I think, you commented on so many good things. People expect everything to be real time. They expect everything to be accessible. They really now, everything's always on type concept.
Yeah.
And we've gotten really used to that. But I also think it's really manageable because there's more choices. There's more options. It doesn't matter where your business resides. Although I will say it's always interesting to me when companies relocate and they'll go to move into a new location and they don't check to see what's in that area before they get there. It's
Oh,
like they just
yeah.
assume that availability, high-speed internet is everywhere. It is, but it isn't. And there's different options and there's different price points.
Yeah.
And so making sure that you have your SMB business in a place where you can get access to the tools you need, I think is really critical.
Yeah, I remember watching it. I was watching some show on Prime TV, and there's a commercial about Comcast being like the fiber going into like a rural area, and like how happy that small business was for Comcast to come into that area. And she was like jumping up and down, and she was really happy about it. I'm like, oh, I never really thought about that. Like how the network in rural areas is not as available, right, as it is in the city. And also doing the trek to California this summer, there were some spots that was dead. Like we had no signal. I was like, I can't listen to my music while, because we're streaming, right? And I've like some songs were not downloaded. So I was like, no, this song, I can't listen to this song because it's not downloaded. Was streaming new songs to like mix it up a little bit, and then we got into a dead zone. I'm like, man, I gotta go back to like the old songs I had downloaded.
Like you have to use the radio again, heaven forbid.
Right. And even at that, no, this car has radio. So this car has radio. So we do have a EV that doesn't have, the old school radio.
Mhm.
It's all like it looks like a phone, like a big phone. So I was just wondering if that would work if it was
It
like a
really
dead
is a
zone.
big thing because you could be opening a local library or the gas station or the pizza restaurant that might be the only local pizza restaurant. And nowadays, you need internet to swipe.
Yeah.
You need internet to place your orders. You really need internet to check out the book, like everything that people go to do.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because we have customers, obviously we have those major cities, but we have clients that are all over. And
Hmm.
it's so interesting how those different customers have different struggles
Yeah.
than what some other organizations who are in New York City or in Dallas or Atlanta come across.
Yeah, just imagine if there was no internet and you needed to do a transaction and that person only had credit card and no cash. So you had to like right now, would they come back with that big bulky thing where they has those like different carbon paper, right? Like with the carbon paper and they're like swipe it. I remember doing that like when I was doing retail and like doing the carbon paper thing when the machine was down. I was like, just think about that. Like, do they still provide that?
Trust those anymore because they assume you can either get over a cellular network or you have some type of option. But it's a good point because, primary and secondary, tertiary circuits, everybody needs more options
Hmm.
because something can go down.
Yeah.
Nothing is foolproof. I live in Florida where, we're the lightning capital. Storms come through, internet goes out. It happens frequently in the summer months where I'm sure in, New England, they say the same thing about probably snowstorms. But if there's no secondary, if there's no backup, what do you do?
Yeah.
How do you continue to run your business? And it's
Mhm.
interesting because you'll see signs on doors. I was at just a restaurant once, and they had a sign on the door saying, we're no longer taking customers because our internet's down.
Yeah, exactly. So you lose
And
money.
we literally had to turn everybody away.
That sucks. That really
Yeah.
sucks. All right, on to the next question. So, with the rise of remote work, means 22% of the workforce will be remote by 2025, right? How does this trend force organizations to rethink prioritization critical application like CRMs and communications over non-critical ones like streaming videos?
As a remote worker, obviously,
Mhm.
as you're looking at my home office and all my cute TPX stuffed animals, being able to prioritize applications is critical because, I'm reliant on, I have coax, I have SD-WAN, and I have a 5G failover. I have like a small business setup,
Mhm.
but still a lot of Teams, WebEx, your calling functionality, they eat up some bandwidth. And
Right.
it's critical in a role like mine that your phone quality and your video quality takes a priority versus other people, watching Netflix and doing other things that they might be doing throughout the day. And so there was a lot of thought to prioritizing at organizations, but maybe not so much for the remote workers. I
Right.
really personally think when COVID hit, things changed. When everybody went home, people started to, in one way, good understand the challenges of remote working. In another way, sort of bad because people started to accept things like, oh, it's okay if they can't get on the internet today, or their video just stinks, they're at home. But as now we're back to sort of that hybrid, people are starting to get back to expecting professionalism. And
Mm-hmm.
if you want to have a professional image, you have to have your priority. You have to be able to, if you're, a contact center and you're remote and you're taking calls, you have to be able to like say, oh, I'm waiting for your CRM to download so I can see what your patient information is. Like, that's just not okay.
Mm-hmm.
So if we want folks to be able to continue to work virtually, they have to get all the same benefits of what they had in the office, and being able to prioritize your critical apps, like, your CRMs, anything contact center related, anything video call related. Emails can be slow. At the end of the day, they take the least amount of bandwidth. But if your email's running 3 minutes behind, no one's going to suffer.
Right.
If your video is running 3 minutes behind, we wouldn't be having this call.
Exactly.
And so I really think that that's becoming more critical. And I think as companies are really deciding, am I a hybrid model now? They're starting to pay more attention. And then, of course, then as you know, there's the flip side to that too, because then you have the security aspect.
Right.
Are my employees coming in through a VPN? Am I giving them access to everything? What's going over their home network where their spouses and their children are playing? So it brings a lot of things into play. But I think organizations are getting smarter and starting to realize that there are permanent solutions that they can be using for the remote workers.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also, like, do you have a company owned device for that individual, right? Or are they using their own device, which I believe is dangerous. Security wise, it's a little bit iffy on that side. And so I would say preferably company.
I agree. And you want, most people have some type of MFA enabled now.
Mhm.
And they have the appropriate tokens, and they have, different things set up to make sure that it isn't just free willy and everybody's, able to access whatever they want. So I agree with you that there has to be some rules
Yeah,
around what everybody's putting in place.
yeah. Separation of the home
Yes.
and the business. I totally agree. Okay, with network visibility is a critical for understanding traffic behavior and ensuring efficiency and security. For a business struggling with this, what's the most effective first step they should take to gain a better view of their network's operations?
I mean, they have a couple options, but the easiest one today primarily is so many organizations have moved to SD-WAN. The
Okay.
information that's available in your SD-WAN capabilities, so you can get a peek into the network, see what's hanging off of the network, what kind of traffic is coming through. A lot of organizations, I know we do this today, even with firewalls. We'll put a firewall in for a week and allow us to sort of monitor and see what kind of traffic's coming in and out, how many different endpoints are hanging off of the device, and get a chance to pull some reporting so a customer can see what's open, what's locked down, where do I look good, where do I not. I think there's so many more assessments now. And
Yeah.
whether that's truly hardware or if something's being pinged, it could be something as simple as just doing a pen test or something to come in and see what type of scam we can set up, and just going in where you don't have to make a full-time decision. You can do a quick assessment, a little bit of a test, a little bit of, a visibility into the network. But a lot of times you can use the hardware that the customer already owns. They
Mhm.
don't always have access to it. They don't always understand the data. And so just getting someone who can explain the data and say, oh, I went into your portals. Let's go in your portal together and let's see what you have and see what things look like makes a big difference. And I also think the days of, for a long time, even as a managed service, it's like, well, we'll do that for you. But a lot of customers still want to see.
Mhm.
They still want to know, like, it's great that someone's driving the car for you, but you still want to see the map and you want to know where you're going,
Yeah.
and people like to have that bit of visibility. I think allowing customers to have visibility, but then educating them on what they're seeing so they can make positive decisions is really helpful too.
Yeah. The translation, right?
Yes.
So if you can make the translation for them to say, hey, what we're seeing is ABC, and you understand what ABC means, it's a little bit easier to make decisions at that point versus, hey, this is gobbledygook, right? This is
8
gobbledygook.
million acronyms. I mean, there's so many
Right.
acronyms out there that you never know if they really do know what you're referring to unless you really ask.
Right. And then some acronyms mean different things. They have the same acronym,
Yes.
And it's totally different, right? Like CIA. For me, I know that is, the Center of Intelligence Alliance Association. I don't remember. And then there's the Culinary Institution of America, right? Like, so it's totally like one side is this and that's the other thing. It's CIA. But which CIA are you talking about?
And it's true. If I was someone who knew how to cook, which for people who know me, I'm not, but if I was and I heard CIA, I might be thinking of something totally different.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm watching a show right now. It's called like Next Gen Chef or something like that, and they are at the CIA, right? So they're the Culinary Institute of America, and I'm like, that's not what I thought it would be at.
You're like, why are they at the CIA? And what if they done it legally wrong? Yeah, exactly.
It's totally like different perspective. The perspective had to shift right there when I started the show, and they're like CIA. I'm like, huh? What are you guys doing? Why do you need like super security measures for cooking show? I'm like, ah, that would
It's pouring chicken thin, okay?
yeah, exactly. The chicken crossed the road, and we need to know why. Okay. Now, with a network that is built for the future needs to be incorporated scalability. What are two practical technology choices an organization can make today to ensure their network can scale for 2 years down the road?
I think one is a purchasing decision when you're deciding what vendor. Are
Mm,
we going with Fortinet? Are we going with Aruba? Are we going with Juniper? There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions. There's a lot of changes in the industry. Making sure that you are working with a vendor that has support, that is continuing to innovate new products. So you're not worried that you're buying something. Typically you're not buying something end of sale at the time you're purchasing it, but you want to know an end of life. You want to know if you have 50 locations today and you might have 75 in 2 years,
mhm,
that you're still going to be able to add those products into your network. I think there's so many large, reliable brands, but I do think people still need to look into those capabilities.
mhm.
I am always surprised when we will start working with a new customer who's had something in their network for like a year and they don't know that it's already end of life. And it's like, how did you get this? Where did this come into to play where you already now need to do a refresh
Mhm,
when you weren't anticipating doing a refresh? And then I think the other thing is just partnering with the right people who are going to be managing that solution. So if your needs change, there's been so many changes in businesses. 2 years can seem like tomorrow, but it can also seem like a lifetime. And so even if we start looking at things like just like SASE, people weren't, a standard business wasn't talking about SASE several years ago. But, again, things have changed in the marketplace. And so they want to make sure that whatever they're putting into their network has future capabilities, even if they don't need it today.
right.
Even if they say, "Oh, that's not something we're using." They want to make sure that they're looking at products that can grow. If not, they're going to continually have to rip and replace, which is not only expensive, but disruptive.
Mhm,
And so I think asking questions again, even if it's not something you need today, just to know where it might be in that short 2, 3, 4 year time frame so that they don't constantly get stuck saying, oh, here we go, another big capital expense.
yeah. So just like an analogy is like buying a one bedroom home, right? While 5 months pregnant, and like knowing that you're gonna need another room in about a year or two, right? Like it's
That's a great analogy though. And like that one, like people, it seems so obvious, but I think for businesses, they're not always thinking that far ahead on the technology side
Mhm,
to say, okay, what might we need in 2, 3 years? What technology are people starting to do a little hype about? And again, you don't want to oversubscribe. You don't want to be paying 5 times more than you need to for something that might come in the future.
mhm,
But I do think there's a lot of things in that mid-range thing where people at least need to be thinking about
yeah,
it, at least knowing what might be coming up
mhm.
so they don't fall too far behind.
So maybe a good question. I'm talking to clients where you're like, what is your 2 3 year forecast in your business, right? And see what the capabilities will be needed at that point, with that forecast and what they're thinking in their head, like, hey, or like the C-suite, what they're thinking about, what they're projecting in the future, in the next 3 years. Oh, maybe we'll have 2 other locations. We project to have another 5 location throughout the United States. Something like that. That would be a good question to ask.
I think that would be a great question because they don't need to know what the technology is.
Mhm.
The person who's consulting, their trusted advisor, needs to know what their vision is.
Yeah.
And then they can be thinking ahead about what technology they might need in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I think that is a good way how you articulated that to sort of close the loop. Because even if they're going international or if they're doing big mergers and acquisitions, or their goal is just to be exactly what they are today, but bringing in more revenue, all those things would be really helpful to know to make sure you're picking something that will expand or downsize or be the status quo to what you're suggesting and recommending.
Yeah. So that they don't overspend, but they can have the choice later on to be able to expand.
Yes.
Cool. So now with the lines between networking and cybersecurity blending, a functionality merging in edge solutions, what is your perspective on the non-negotiable security layers in every SMB network should implement?
Well, that's a good question. There's a lot to that. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, every SMB, I mean, you have the hardware perspective and you have the employee perspective. From the hardware perspective, table stakes, they need a managed firewall. They need your firewall capabilities, your advanced threat protection. They need to make sure they're securing their business. Most ransomware attacks are 50% are to SMB, not to large enterprise. So, the myth of I'm a small company, no one's going to come after me is so untrue.
Mhm.
Simple things like MFA, multi-factor authentication, everybody needs to be using. It's not what is your password, it's how many steps does it take for people to get through. And
Mhm.
so there are definitely some table stakes. I also think, though, when you start to talk about the users in an SMB, security awareness training, where
Yeah.
people are, we live in this space. So we're like, oh, don't open that email. Like we know,
Right.
we forget how much more we know than probably the average person because we've been doing this for so long. But all of the threats, people come through, you click on the bad link, you open, you forward, you share. Without security awareness training, it doesn't matter how good your systems and tools are. I mean, employees, users are the number one cause
Mhm.
of all risks to security. Security awareness training is so inexpensive. Inbox detection and response, the ability to say, I don't know if I should open this or not, and having something check it to say, yes, you can click or no, you shouldn't. Some of the least expensive tools are the ones that are going to protect the SMBs the most.
Mhm.
And I think, though, there's still education on why do you want these? Why are these important? You don't need to have 50, 100, 500, 5,000 employees. It's really the companies that have 10 and 20
Yeah.
and 30 and 40, because those are the individuals, if they're not in a technology business, they could be, a uniform company, or something that's very non-technological, but they still live on email just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
They still use it in all functions of their business. So I think a lot of focus still needs to be on the users. I think that gets forgotten, and I think it should be a priority. And I think it can fit in anybody's budget because those items are designed to not be outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
And the hardware gets more too. Do you have a physical office space? What are we protecting around the perimeter? Nobody would leave their front door unlocked with a sign that says "Come on in." There's some basic hygiene that every company needs to do. And the good news is, if they're not familiar with what that is, there's so many consultants and advisors out there that, again, I think sort of to our very early subject we were talking about, can do that consultation and
Mhm.
just do an 8-step. Here's a way to protect your business.
Mhm.
A lot of them have compliance and they're obligated to do those steps. Most have some level of compliancy and, regardless of the nature of your company. But even if the compliancy is a minimum, just to have someone check is no different from, having someone walk around your house and make sure all the doors and windows are shut.
Right.
That second set of eyes, I think, is always really helpful.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was talking to a gentleman the other day about his company, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I think we're too small for your services, right?" And I'm like, do you have a bank account? Do you? He's like, yeah, I have a bank account. Like, I need to get paid, right? I'm like, and I need to pay my employees and whatnot. I'm like, you're vulnerable,
Yes.
just like that. And he's like, okay, let's talk. I'm like, yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, what a great statement you did there because it is everybody has vulnerabilities. And even when you get into the largest, when you're dealing with enterprise, they have more staff, more money, more resources. But again, then they have more people they're trying to protect. So the challenge is just different for small to medium to large, but everybody has the challenge.
Yeah, everybody. Even individuals, right? Like in your personal space, because learning cybersecurity awareness in your business also helps you for your own personal stuff because you also have a bank.
Well, it was, I have a good friend of mine who is a cybersecurity guru, and I love working with him. And we were having the conversation once, over a glass of wine, and what is the one thing you would do? And he's like, you need an MFA, literally. He goes, on every single thing you own. He goes, I know it's a pain. Nobody wants to take that extra step. He's
Mhm.
like, but people will tell me they do it on their main credit card, but not on the other credit cards. Or they do it on one bank, but not every bank. He's like, from a personal perspective, he's like, that is the simplest, easiest, no question asked. He's like, even on your airline accounts. He's like, I know we're all lazy and we don't want to take an extra step. He's like, but if I just had to tell people one thing to do in their personal life, that's the number one thing. And I went home that night and I added it into anything that it wasn't already added. It was already on my bank. But
Right.
to his point, you don't want it on everything. And then I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I
stop
mean,
being
like,
lazy, start being smart.
yeah, just like, like your Amazon accounts, right? Like if you leave your credit card number in
Yes.
for the cart, if somebody hacks it, they could use your credit card to ship stuff to their house. Like, it's that easy, right? It's something that
Yes.
you don't think about. You're like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna leave my credit card in the account for future purchases so that I don't have to enter it later on because I do a lot of shopping on Amazon, so on and so forth. So yeah, no, I'm just gonna leave it there. But if your account gets hacked
It's a
and if you
fine
leave,
line
yeah,
between lazy and effective.
very fine. All right, so now the shift to SD-WAN leverages low-cost broadband connections. In your view, what is the most significant strategic business advantage for an organization in replacing a legacy WAN solution with a modern software-driven architecture?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I mean, one of the number one driving factors, of course, for SD-WAN is just price because you
Mhm.
can now get less expensive internet and get similar capabilities. So folks can now use coax and broadband and solutions that maybe they would have never considered before or that weren't going to be part of that sophisticated MPLS network. So I think price opened up a lot of folks' eyes to say, let me hear about it. How does this really replicate? How does this really give me this private network experience? How does it let me prioritize? How does it let me make sure that I am keeping things contained? And so it's interesting today. We still see, especially in banking and financial and certain, I'd say slower to adapt industries, that there's still huge MPLS networks out there, very expensive
Mhm.
because the fear of ripping and replacing or going to some of the newer technology. But as folks are moving in, most voice calls are in the cloud now. Again, we still have a lot of legacy customers. I was on an appointment this morning with someone moving off of a traditional PBX, and I'm like, oh, I haven't been on one of these calls in a long time, but you do still get them, and it's a good sized organization. Happens to be a bank, coincidentally. But, as they're going through, applications want speed. Applications need to be prioritized.
Mhm.
They need to keep the network private, but the budgets have changed. And if we want to afford a lot of the security conveniences and a lot of the enhanced capabilities, that's sort of where that crossroad happens. And when they can make that migration over, I mentioned in my little home office where I have my whole little SD-WAN setup, I've had this set up for like 7 years, which is sort of cutting edge 7 years ago.
Right.
Most people weren't getting to put that hardware. And it's what ensured that, if I changed my background, people didn't know whether I was in the office or whether I was at home. And
Mhm.
everything was reliable and crystal clear and presented itself well. And at the same time, I'm not, but if I was doing credit card transactions or doing anything and taking any HIPAA compliant type data, I would be able to do it. So I think I think now most companies have heard of it. Most are using it. But for those that are still a little bit on the lagger, they're still trying to say, okay, what technology do I need? And again, what am I going to need 2, 3, 5 years? Because that's where, again, some of those, we weren't really talking about SASE when we first started selling SD-WAN. We weren't talking about some of the different capabilities. We weren't really talking about SD-WAN and firewalls at the same time. You were
Mm,
sort of talking about the network and then talking about the security. And now those conversations are all coming together. And I think that's a big difference too, is it's really hard, if you're in a consultant mode and you know this, to go in, you can't just talk about one segment anymore.
mhm.
Everything bleeds over. And, it's really hard to separate any piece of their total package. And, usually it's not one vendor doing everything, but it's one consultant that might be recommending everything and
Yeah.
really going into that client and saying, okay, we want to use the least amount of vendors possible, but we're going to use more than one. We're going to need multiple expertise.
Right.
But we can start from, when that internet comes in the door, all the way to your customer experience and secure it from A to B. That's really where, even to what we talked about earlier, that's where the excitement comes in because
Hmm.
there's so much to have a conversation on.
Yeah, totally agree. Because it's interesting to talk to different businesses and their pain points, right? Like I talked to a business the other day where their pain points is their Comcast bill, and their Comcast bill is a lot of money, right? And they have like 3 locations, and they're trying to manage all the bills, and it's crazy. It's different, a different bill cycle, different paperwork and all that stuff. And I'm like, whoa, okay, let's see what we can do here, right? And also, as somebody that is more focused on cybersecurity on the networking side, I'm like, whoa, what can I do? Right? I didn't know about SD-WAN. I did not know about SASE. So I needed to learn from my side, from my own way of thinking of the solution can I provide them? What can I do?
Yes.
I was stumped. I was like, let me call Comcast. Let's see what we can do, right? Like, I'm like, and they're like, maybe SD-WAN? I'm like, okay.
And it does. And I think really we're most of us are really fortunate that our organizations have invested in some good technical resources.
Hmm.
Folks that can really say, okay, this is what you designed out. This is how we can do another design. And here's a couple different options. And
Yeah.
so it's nice because you can be budget friendly. You can be very strict. You can be very loose. There's different ways to do it. I think the engineering resources, my own organization, my competitors' organizations, the TSDs that are out there now, the different suppliers, there's just so many folks that can bring additional expertise to really diagram it out and make it easy for a customer to understand and consume.
Yeah. Totally agree.
Thank goodness, because all of us who are technical but are professional salespeople at heart like to have those resources with us.
Yeah. Because you can't learn everything, right? It's too much. There's too much in the technology world. If you look at a technology solution map, it's like rows after rows of technology, and you're like, wow.
We
And then
used to
there's
have
more coming in.
There's more coming in. We used to have a slide then, and it showed like all the security players out there. And it basically was like 300 little bitty logos. I mean, you couldn't read anything. And just to make the point of how many different organizations there are. And
Hmm.
yeah, none of us can be an expert in all of them by any means. And
No.
it's how do you whittle down and get to the right one that's going to meet your customers' requirements.
Yeah. So managing networks and security effectively often requires a dozen layer security solutions and a 24-hour, 24/7 monitoring. For an in-house IT generalist, what's the biggest operational pain point that outsourcing can alleviate to prevent staff burnout and turnover?
We hear probably two main areas that internal IT hate to do, don't have time to do, and would rather have someone else do it. The
Mhm.
first one is when it comes to patching.
Yeah.
Nobody loves to patch and keep up with patching. But I mean, again, it's one of the most critical things that needs to get done. But one of those things that is mundane and requires a lot of time
Mhm.
and requires a lot of effort and when there's a fire drill going on, patching gets pushed to the side. I would say the same with backups. Everybody knows you absolutely have to have a backup. You can't have a security posture without a backup disaster recovery solution. But again, I'll use your very, very generic example. You're at home and you have your DVR, and the younger generation is like, what the heck is a DVR? But you have your DVR and all your shows are taped. And until you go to look to see if the tape is there, you don't know if it taped or not. I mean,
Right.
All these ways where companies are like assuming their backups are working. And until you need it, who knows? Unless you have a process and you have a means and you have a way to test and you have a way to restore. So I would say patching frequently one that easy to outsource.
Mm-hmm.
Backups one, easy to outsource and more effective. And I'll add a third one, Microsoft. I've yet to find an in-house IT that says, oh my God, I love to deal with Microsoft. That's my favorite part of the job. But unless, most large organizations, Google will give the percentage of how many they have. Most of them are using Microsoft.
Mm-hmm.
And that is another one where MSPs can very easily support Microsoft licensing and Microsoft support and help desk, and not having folks getting bogged down with some of the minutia. So patching backups, Microsoft. When it comes to things like the firewalls, in-house IT staff likes that. They like the switches. They like the WAN and the LAN. They tend to, those things tend to be more enjoyable, although those are easy to outsource too. But those to me are the things that I think they find to be most mundane and most likely to outsource if they could.
Yeah, I totally agree, because I remember doing patching, and it wasn't Microsoft patching, it was Adobe Acrobat patching.
Yeah, I mean, who wants to do that?
It was like, we didn't have like a central way of patching, so I wasn't pushing it from my computer, right? So I had to go to every single office, which was about 100, every so often, to be like, hey, I need to patch. So I need a bit of your time to use your computer and to reboot. And a lot of these people did not reboot the computers for like a very, very long time. So then they were behind on Microsoft patching. They were behind on Chrome patching. They were behind on Adobe, on a lot of stuff. And I'm like, sorry, guys, I need to do this. We need to be secure, right?
You made me think of a funny. I remember we used to have sales kickoffs and we would have to bring our laptop so that they could do the patching. So once a year, all the salespeople would come in, hundreds of us, and would have to drop our laptop in a bin. I haven't thought about this until you said that. And they would keep your laptop for the day because they're like, you're going to be in meetings and you don't need it. And back then, we didn't even know what the patching was. I mean, this was, and we didn't know what they were doing, but that's what they were doing, is they were physically going in and doing updates,
Yeah.
which is just insane. But all the IT people would come to the sales kickoffs so that they could do all the patching and the updates. Now, can you imagine if you were only doing updates once a year? It's insane to think about it, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
Once a year, they would touch our machines.
Wow.
Yeah. And
That's
these were big organizations. The first one I'm thinking of, I mean, I worked for a multi-billion-dollar company. That was our patching.
wow. Yeah.
Would not fly today.
No, not at all. No, not once a year.
No.
No.
Nor would anyone let you take their laptop. I mean, they hold on to it, They won't let you take, they'll let you take their kid before the laptop's going, okay.
Right. Everything's important in this laptop. I need to work tonight.
Exactly.
Wow. So that in the context of protecting sensitive data and managing associated risk, what is the practical difference between a network security posture and its security profile?
To me, that goes a little bit back towards the conversation we're talking about. You have your perimeter, you have your hardware, you have your solutions,
Mhm.
and then you have the profile of your organization and your employees and your staff and how you're actually viewing security. And it's not always the same teams managing both. It's interesting. Sometimes security awareness training is in HR or in training and not actually with security and IT. So there's different parts of the company sometimes that are managing.
That's
I think go ahead.
No, that's interesting. That's really
Yeah,
interesting.
we do it. You think it's all like security based, but we see a broad spectrum. And with some SMB, there is no security person.
Mhm.
We have an IT person sometimes, but small doctor's office. That IT person is sometimes the doctor or the office manager. Or, it's somebody else. We do a lot of veterinary clinics. And, you'll get on the phone with the veterinarian, who's
Yeah.
the one who's really talking about their security posture, because they can't afford to truly have that person internal. But even if you're completely outsourcing, someone at the company still has to be the point person.
Right.
There isn't that complete outsource where nobody does anything. And, there isn't someone that has to have some expertise. So I do think a lot of that is tightening down the network and understanding all your hardware related components or your cloud based related components, and then still dealing with the personnel piece
Yeah.
and making sure that all of that is getting addressed as well, because you can't have one without the other, and they're
Mm.
both priorities. And I think the busier people get, for years we used to have people say, "Oh, I have a firewall. It's in the closet." I'm like, "Okay, well, who's watching it? What tools are we using?"
hmm
And it's really sort of, again, I think everything goes back to that little bit of a checklist. Are we just remembering to do best practice? A lot of things, even in life, you don't go to a grocery store without a list, or you're going to buy a bunch of things you don't need. Are they, having their compliance list? Are they having their security checklist? Are they really covering the boxes so they don't come home just with a bunch of Oreos and, nothing else to eat that week? And I think that that's really where, regardless of the size of the business, they have to make sure they're keeping that focus.
Yeah, totally agree. Because having just Oreos all week is interesting.
It's only good the first day.
Yeah. And then you're like, day 2, you're like, I have nothing else
There's
to
the
eat.
protein.
I'm going to starve all week.
Exactly.
Man, no, that's not a diet I want. So, in which of these 3 areas, security, productivity, and utilization, do you find SMB leaders typically underestimate the most when assessing their own network?
Utilization. Because I still think a lot of SMBs don't have the tools to have any idea what their utilization looks like. And so it just becomes assumptions. Oh, my internet's slow. I must have too many people on it, or things of that nature, where if they've started to talk some security, they might have some tools and resources that they're using. But I think I would probably go with the third one on that one.
Okay. We'll ask around and see, make a poll and see.
See what others think. That's, I love when these questions, because it makes you go, And it lets the audience know that I didn't get these questions in advance because I'm actually thinking of them.
Yeah, there's no questions in advance here.
There's no questions in advance.
Now, looking at the 5 steps to improve network performance. So, gain network visibility, assess network needs, monitor performance, patch firmware, upgrade gear. Which of these steps do you see most organizations fail to prioritize, and what are the consequences to this failure?
Well, I think the pageant one we addressed a little, and I would still have to say that becomes the low priority.
hmm
It's mundane, it's challenging. And I think, there are so many. I was thinking of one in particular. The article's going to slip my mind, but it was one of the bugs that was out that for like years people knew about, but nobody had done the patches. Like, you hear that so frequently, and yet it's still not done. And it's not because people don't want to be protected, it's because people are busy and
Yeah.
they just don't always have the time. So I would think that we'll go in and do assessments. I mean, it's crazy how many people were still running Windows 10, but yet lots and lots. And then they're like, "Ooh," and then they don't realize that they're not able to do any patching because they haven't done their upgrades and they haven't gotten to fully supported versions. And I just think, again, they're focusing on their core business, which they should be. And they're focusing on whether it's the veterinarian or the bank or the pizza parlor or whatever else. Those are the things that are easy to slip because they don't affect you day to day until something happens.
Yeah, I totally
If you're having outdated hardware, maybe you might notice that you don't have functionality you're looking for. Things might be more obvious. If you're not doing something like patching until there's a problem, it might not be obvious at all. And then when it's a problem, then everything hits the fan and then it's super obvious. But then then it's a whole nother story and a whole nother challenge. So that's, to me, it's those hidden gems that are the hardest to remember, or the least ones that are raising their hand going, "Fix me, fix me."
Yeah, I totally agree. Because, like, let's say that you run Windows 10 and is it already end of life for Windows
Yes.
10? Yeah. So you're running Windows 10, you're currently running it, and you have no idea because you're running your business, right? Like you're too
Yeah.
busy running your own business and whatnot. And then you're like, one day, you're like, oh, let me go to QuickBooks, and your mouse is not moving. What do you do then? You're like, I
Yeah.
can't do anything. It seems slow. Why is it so slow? Why is everything very, very slow at this point? And then it's like this for everybody in your business. Let's say you're even like 15 users and everybody
Yeah.
has Windows 10, and you're like, hey, everybody, productivity went down and whatnot. And what's the issue here? Everybody's complaining about the laptops being slow and whatnot. And you don't have an IT staff member to help you with those things. So you're like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do you do?
Reading about it to know, you know what I mean? Like a
Right.
lot of people, again, we forget we know so much because we're in this space.
Yeah.
But there are lots of other verticals we don't know so much about.
Yeah.
We maybe don't know when the latest flu shot came out or something in the medical community, but we know what we know. And so these small to medium sized businesses do really need someone sort of doing that poke
Yeah.
and saying, hey, have you looked at this? Have you looked at that?
Yeah. Totally agree. Okay. Let's go a little bit personal.
All right.
All right. So you are a founding member and past president of the Alliance of Channel Women. What was the initial spark and observation that led you and the other founders to start that organization?
I love this story. We were in Vegas at Channel Partners one evening, and there was four of us literally sitting in the bar after hours, and we were just sort of, having the conversation about how few women were in the room. And this was, 15 years ago. And, fortunately, there were starting to get more women in the room. But at the time, there was a lot less of us. And there was a lot less of female executives and a lot less, of female panelists. And it just became sort of evident that we maybe weren't being represented. And so it was always the desire to, one, level up, to give a chance for us to represent ourselves in a positive light, for us to expand our careers, network, to make more money. It was never we're all in it to be in business. We are, business professionals, and that was never something that was hidden. But it was also, how do we help everybody else? How do we do it together? How do we bring more to the table? And so at the time, several folks really dug in deep. Nancy, Jan, Hillary, Beta, so many great women, and really helped kick off an organization where our first event, we got together. I don't know, maybe there was 50 of us that got together. There's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of women across the country taking part in national events and local chapters and local events, and finding a way to collaborate and finding a way to mentor. When we were young in the industry, it would have been so amazing to have had so many female role models and leaders and folks in the technology space. And so we've come a long way. We still have a long way more to go. But as I personally have evolved into like different parts of my career, it's interesting because there's different ways to give back now and different things that get you excited. And it's nice that it's a passion to see women succeed. I've been so blessed to have good success myself and to find ways to share it and give it back and also recognize those people who did it for you.
Yeah.
So I think it really is the full spectrum.
That's really cool. That's a really cool
Love it.
organization.
It's been a great extra bonus of this career that I've had.
That's good. That's really good. So you earned a bachelor's of science degree in marketing from University of Central Florida.
Go UCF.
How has marketing degree been a unique asset in your long career across telecom and channel sales leadership?
That's an interesting question because when we went to college, the degrees were limited. You had marketing and finance and general business. Now if you go to UCF, they have a selling degree. They have degrees in what we use. But I tell people I originally went in for finance.
Okay.
And halfway through, I realized I wasn't interested in managing other people's money. I just wanted to make my own. And I switched to marketing. Okay. And that is really a true story. I was interested in money, but not management of money. It's a very, very different concept. So I think back then marketing was very focused on traditional marketing. which now so much of it doesn't exist, between social media and different platforms and all of the different tools. But I do think getting an education and learning again business fundamentals and business acumen and what organizations and companies want really plays when you come into a role where you're working with businesses every day. And so to have not had that foundation, I think would have missed a really good starting opportunity in my career. But I think now so much of it is based on the experience I've been able to grow and share and enjoy.
Yeah. Through the ACW organization that you have founded.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I thank you so much, Stacey, for coming on and accepting my invitation to be a guest. It was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I hope to have you back on another time to have a different conversation.
I loved it, Finn. This was fun and interesting, and I really enjoyed it. So I appreciate you having me on. I would love to come back. We could probably talk for hours and hours. So thank you. I appreciate it. This was great.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
Goodbye. See, I didn't hang up on you. That was good. Let me real quick tell I have a call at 2. Let me just send him a quick note, tell him I'm running.